What a beautiful pond. Look at this. All these beautiful plants and the sound of running water, and I want this in my life. Welcome back, casual gardeners. So I am here at Utah Water Gardens with Sheida, who is way awesomer than me, but she's not on social media herself yet because she's too busy running a freaking business.
It's all of these things that keep me busy, all of these plants.
All right, and she is gonna help me figure out, could I have this?
Do you have the space for it? Because you certainly could. If you have the space for it, I say go for it. But even if you don't have space for a 50 by 100 foot pond, you can still have a water feature.
So what if I don't have space for a full-size swimming pool? This is about pool size, right?
It is, yeah.
I'd swim in this, but I wouldn't because the sign says, don't put your hands in it.
That's true.
Yeah, so sorry, fish.
Well, this is an above ground lined pond. We line it with a 45 mil EPDM. So even if you don't want a pond this big, you can use a pond liner or a preformed tub or a hard plastic tote to achieve a water feature where you've got circulating water, you've got some fish, maybe some aquatic snails, and of course, what makes water features come alive? Aquatic plants. It doesn't take much. Even a 35-gallon tote would help you achieve enough space that you could have your water, your aquatic plants, and a really nice ecosystem.
What would you recommend for the best, smallest size for a pond? Is there like a lower limit?
You know, the lower limit is anything, if you can imagine, you're going to want to put plants in there. You might want them to be potted. You might want a combination of potted, bare root, and free-floating plants. So you're really going to want to get something that it's least maybe 2 feet by 2 feet.
If I've got 4 square feet of pond,
yeah,
that's like a good small pond.
That's a good small pond that you can plant, that you could also maybe have some aquatic snails that are going to be your decomposers, and that maybe you're going to put some fish in that are going to help eat the insect larvae, the mosquito larvae that you might not want to attract, and to help fertilize the plants that you might want to continue having to flourish in your water feature.
So would you say you like the liners more or like the hard?
Good question. Is preformed better than liner?
Yeah,
no, but they serve a function, right? I would say I prefer a liner because it can conform to whatever space you have. And so to me, that gives you more flexibility. That gives you more customization.
So you can like more control over your shape and your depth.
And here's something really nice about your EPDMs, which are synthetic rubber liners. They last upwards of 25 years and still have their malleability, even in our high elevation where we've got hotter than hot and we get colder than cold. They do not lose their flexibility.
Oh, okay, so they stay flexible. Is EPDM going to resist the solar degradation better than the liners?
Way better than the liners that tend to be made of, the preformed tubs, right? Because they're usually like a thick ABS plastic, right? They will degrade faster than your liners will.
Okay, so I should probably go with the liner then.
I think liner would be really great for the application you're doing. You've got clay soil, right?
Yeah.
So like digging is a factor. Some of our customers have lots of rocks in their backyard and they're working against all of the rocks and everything. If we're working against clay or rocks, we can really customize what we're doing, the shape, and have a nice liner that you can mold to area.
All right, now as I'm digging my hole, what minimum depth do you think I should shoot for?
I think a good minimum depth, honestly, is about 18 inches. That way, you leave room for your potted plants and your fish to go dormant in the bottom over winter.
Okay, so fish need 18 inches or more?
18 inches or more. 18 inches is about the minimum that you could go with, and you would want to put your goldfish in there, right? And I wouldn't put too many for the area that you have. Depending on the size of your water feature, something for you, maybe a 2x2, I would maybe do 3 goldfish and let them slowly, ever so slowly, they will max out at a 12-inch size.
All right, and for a small pond, of course, we don't want to do koi.
We don't, because no matter what you do, they are not like bonsai. You cannot keep them small.
So
they will grow large.
Koi get like this.
3 to 4 feet in length.
And goldfish, the goldfish can still do this.
About 12 inches, yeah, and that's it. And then it takes them a long time to get there.
So my options are goldfish or gambusia. Gambusia.
And if you put some aeration in there, both will survive over the winter.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Oh wait, gambusia will overwinter?
they've overwintered in this pond before because we keep our aerators going. So they have adequate aeration.
As long as there's a break in the ice, basically?
Yep, as long as there's enough room for gas exchange while they go dormant.
Do goldfish need the hole too?
Yes, all fish do.
So all the fish need a hole in the ice?
Yes, they do.
Good to know.
Yeah.
What would you say are like some of the best plants for a small pond?
Okay, the best plants for the small pond, I would do a variety of plants. I think you should have some foliage resting just on the surface of the water, really important for pollinators. Some pollinators like a lot of height, so I think we should do, when you're going to do something and you've got water movement, you want visual interest. Let's say if all of our plants were just resting like a water lily pad on the surface of the water, would it look pretty? Yes, but would it look very interesting? No, because you don't have that varying height. So I would probably go with something that's just resting on the surface. I would go with something that has a little bit of mid-height, flowering perennial, and then I would go with something that's really, really tall to kind of not only visually be interesting, but we want different levels of pollinators too to feel attracted to the pond and to notice it from a distance.
All right, so just like in a traditional planting, where you've got the short foreground and then kind of more height.
Taller,
So we can arrange our water feature the same way.
Definitely. So whatever's closest to you that you're going to view, you're going to want lowest, just barely setting on the top of the water, like your giant clover, like your water lilies, like your water hearts. What you're also going to want are your plants that have some mid-height and that have some flowers kind of open to your butterflies, attracting birds, attracting your bees. And then you want your really tall plants too, because they're also going to help shade the water. People say, how much water coverage do I need? Ideally, for a place like Utah, you want 70% water coverage.
So
you want that water surface covered. You want it shading at least 70% so you lose less to evaporation.
And then also that's going to reduce the amount of algae that I have to deal with.
This will, because some people say, well, what if I have a pond and I have no plants? You'll have plants, my friend. Algae tends to like warmer, stagnant water. That's why we want water movement and we want to shade it too. We want to drive the temperature down. We want to increase the water movement, and we want to outcompete our algae using plants that are beneficial for all pollinators.
Now also, you can't keep your water clean enough that you won't get algae. Different algae are going to choose, well, they don't choose where they wind up, but all the spores will come, and then your water quality will determine which ones flourish. If you have crystal clear, nutrient-free water, you're still going to get cyanobacteria.
Yes.
and that's a whole different can of worms. If you have high nitrogen, there's algae that will do that. No matter what you've got going on with your water, you're going to get some kind of algae. So don't expect to not get algae. We're just minimizing the amount of algae that's in that water so it doesn't get out of control. It's all about balance.
Balance, yeah.
Yeah. All right, now there are actually hundreds of plants we could pick.
Yeah.
Because, man, you got a lot of plants here. So I think to save everybody's time, let's kind of pick like a top 3 low plants, top 3 mid plants, top 3 high plants.
I would say your low plants, a lot of people want water lilies, but we might not have the space for a traditional water lily. They've got a lot of spread, 2 to 4 feet of spread. You can do a dwarf water lily. You can also do water hearts. They are smaller, they still have pads and they still have flowers, but you can keep them in small 1-gallon containers. So for your small floating plants, you can always do the potted plants, which are going to be your water hearts, your giant clover, and you can do free floating plants like your duckweed, your azolla, your salvinia, and your frogbit. For your mid-height plants, I would say some really good ones that kind of trail and grow up are your aquatic forget-me-not. That's a very attractive plant with really small micro blue flowers that are very, attractive to the eye. I'd say another good mid-height plant would be your cardinal flower, your lobelias. They do very well and they attract hummingbirds. Another good mid-height plant that you want to kind of keep potted up are your aquatic mints, because they have a cluster of flowers and they're bringing all the pollinators to the pond.
So there's an aquatic mint?
Yes.
Wow, mint really does go everywhere.
Mint, a lot of aquatic plants are in the mint family, and people say, well, how can I tell what's a mint and what's not? If you've got a square stem, you've got a mint, my friend. And a lot of our plants have got square stems, and thus they're in the mint family. Now, what about our really tall plants? For really tall, one plant that comes to mind that all of the dragonflies love is going to be your giant bulrush. Even your regular bulrush, the Serpis family. The Serpis maritimus, the bulrush, grows as tall as your broadleaf cattails and your graceful cattails. They could be planted side by side and your dragonflies will still choose to land on your bulrush. So for my taller plants, I would say if you have a small container garden, you're only going to put maybe one large, really tall plant in there. Do yourself a favor and grab yourself a bulrush. A graceful cattail is also a really good tall plant. A graceful cattail, or even your aquatic iris. They are flowering. They flower earlier. They're very beautiful, and you can get a lot of different color varieties. One of my favorite aquatic iris is called the black gamecock, and it's a dark, beautiful purple.
I think I was actually reading, you can feed azolla to chickens.
Yes, a lot of, okay, actually that's a good, I'm glad you brought that up. A lot of our customers have chickens, and they will come in and they will buy azolla and duckweed for their chickens.
Okay, so duckweed too.
Yeah. It's really high in nitrogen, the azolla, right? It's a nitrogen fixer. It's a very cool plant in and of itself. They're in the fern family. We love our ferns. Some of the smallest ferns in the world are azolla and duckweed.
It's worth thinking about because I don't always have greens from my garden for the girls.
Yeah, and azolla, that would be a great way to do it,
at least
fast. Through the summer months. And in the winter months, you'll probably be able to bring it into your greenhouse.
It might grow in an unheated greenhouse in the winter.
Maybe. I mean, duckweed is a native to Utah. Duckweed, it persists in the reservoirs.
So as long as it's not frozen, it'll just keep going.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it'll go kind of dormant, but and then it'll make a reemergence when it gets the sunlight and the warmth that it needs.
I was actually having so much fun with Sheida and her employees over at Utah Water Gardens that I forgot to record a proper sign-off while I was there. So we're back in my garden to just wrap the video up. I want to say that Sheida is one of the most knowledgeable people I know in this whole state of Utah when it comes to building pond maintenance and pond plants. So if you live anywhere in Utah or southern Idaho or whatever, if you can get to the Salt Lake Valley and visit Utah Water Gardens, it's well worth your visit. And if you are feeling bad that we didn't get to say goodbye to Sheida today after our visit together, well, don't worry. She's threatened to see us again, and I am tickled pink about it. So look forward to at least one more visit from Sheida on our channel. And as we continue our pond journey, just keep in mind, we don't just build ponds for us. Those ponds support our pollinators. They help support our wildlife. And they'll even help keep the squirrels from eating your tomatoes, because squirrels don't love tomatoes. They're just eating those things for the water. Thank you so much for joining me here in my garden today. Hope you all have a wonderful time in your own.